Welcome back to The Look and Sound of Leadership, an ongoing series of executive coaching tips designed to help you be perceived in the workplace the way you want to be perceived. I'm Tom Henschel, your executive coach, and today we're talking about how to tackle overtalking. Michael was in his 12th year as Chief Technology Officer at a global food distribution company. His relationship with David, the CEO, went back even further. Michael and David were fixtures and friends. Michael and I met with David to hear his goals for Michael's coaching. David was direct. "You've got to stop talking so much, Michael. That's the whole reason for the coaching. I love you, but you're driving people crazy. Senior staff, the board, your team, me too." David turned to me saying, "You've got to fix him." Even though I never think of coaching as fixing, I understood David's message. When Michael's 360-degree feedback report came back, the overwhelming area for development was the same. He talked too much. One comment read simply, "Make him stop." At our first coaching conversation, I asked, "Is this feedback new to you?" He laughed. "Are you kidding? I think my mom was telling me to shut the hell up back when I was a kid. No, this is not new to me." I asked, "Well, how have you changed over the years? Are you talking less now than other times in your life, or more?" He thought about that for an instant, then said, "I think maybe I didn't talk so much when I was new here. I think I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut and learn, but over the years, people want you to tell them what you know, and I'm happy to. I feel like I'm not doing my job if I don't." I nodded. "I hear that a lot." "From whom?" he asked, a little confused. "My coaching clients," I said. "You talk with other clients about overtalking?" "Oh my goodness, Michael, absolutely. I've been coaching more than 30 years. I'd say overtalking is probably in the top 5 issues I coach on." He beamed. "Well, I'm glad I'm not alone." I smiled. "You are certainly not alone." He leaned back. "So what's the diagnosis, Doc? Am I curable?" I smiled. "We're going to find out, aren't we?" "Touché," he said. "Now tell me seriously, you've talked with me, you've heard from David, you've read my report. Am I screwed?" "Screwed? In what way?" I asked. "Are people so pissed at me I'm not going to be able to do my job?" I said, "Well, I don't think so. People seem impatient with you, yes, but they also celebrate how smart you are and what a great system you've built. I think your goodwill bank account is pretty full. And," I said, "and people do want you to talk shorter." He looked at me. "Why do you think I've never gotten better? I've been hearing this my whole life. It's kind of embarrassing to think I've never changed." "Embarrassing?" I asked. "Why embarrassing?" "It's like I don't give 2 figs about what anyone tells me. They all say talk shorter, and I say, screw you, I'm going to do it my way. It sounds selfish. That's embarrassing." "Is that how you make sense of this?" I asked. "That you've been overtalking all these years because you're selfish?" "Huh," he said, considering the question. And then he said, "Well, not these days, no. These days, it's like the pressure's on to tell everyone everything. Things are complex. If I don't tell them everything I know, it feels like a form of negligence. So no, that doesn't feel selfish, more like I'm trying to help." I nodded. "Once again, you are not alone." "You mean there are other people who overtalk because they want to be helpful?" "Well, that's one reason I've heard for sure. But Michael, I've heard so many different reasons. When I used to do it, it was because I was enthusiastic. I'd get excited about something and start spewing. Other people tell me they overtalk because they worry about forgetting something, so they have to get it all out." He gave a snort. "I have a woman like that on my staff. Oh, it's hard to listen to her." "Because she overtalks?" I asked. He laughed. "Well, that's not what I meant, but yeah, I suppose she does. That would be ironic if her overtalking annoyed me, wouldn't it? No, I meant because I always feel like she's trying to jam 20 pounds of fertilizer into a 10-pound bag. She's hard to follow because it all comes out in this gush." I nodded and made a sound of understanding. He said, "I find myself writing down my questions because she clearly does not want to be interrupted." "What about you when you talk long?" I asked. "Are you easy to interrupt?" That's a good question. Am I easy to interrupt? Maybe. No, actually, probably not. Oh. Man, irony again. Is that what you do? Get people to see the irony of their behavior? I laughed. I wouldn't have said so. He sighed, saying, I can't ignore this anymore. How do I tackle this? I took a breath. I have my top 2 tools if you want to hear them. You're serious? He asked. I told you I've been talking about this a long time. He picked up his pen, saying, Okay. I said, I talk about the tools in a metaphor. Can I give it to you? Fire away, he said. This is a road metaphor. I took a breath and began. The instant you begin talking, a road appears in front of you. And as the speaker, you're the driver on the road. The people listening to you are your passengers. Your job as driver is to get your listeners down this road to their destination with their interest intact. That's a good trip. Good for them, good for you. If you lose their interest anywhere along the way, that is not a good trip. Not for you, not for them. I went on. Gifted speakers keep their passengers engaged along the road by doing 2 things. First, they are crystal clear about where the road is going. They have a very specific destination in mind. And second, they shape the road to fit the passengers. They tailor the content to suit the need. Michael asked, Are you talking about in a group setting, like an all-hands meeting? I replied, For you and your overtalking? No, I didn't sense the feedback was about those sorts of settings. I'm imagining this road happening in informal settings. No prepared remarks. Maybe your staff meeting. Maybe answering a question from the board, that sort of thing. And I can do this on the fly, he asked. Well, you can learn to, sure, I said. Huh, okay. You're going to talk more about the 2 tools? Absolutely, I said. So let's start with destination. Whether you think of it or not, anything you talk about is going to have a point to it, or it should. Your point is the destination. Your purpose for talking is the road's destination. So you ask yourself 2 questions. What is my point exactly? And why is this something they need to know? Michael said, It's start with the end in mind, isn't it? Right, I said. That is the first tool on the road. Get your destination clear and specific. And you think this is something I can do off the top of my head? I do, I said. If you ask yourself that question, what is my point exactly? I bet you'll have an answer. He grinned sheepishly. I probably should have been asking myself that question already. Feels pretty basic. And then he said, Okay, so that's destination. What's the idea about the passengers? I said, I coached a woman who was an overtalker. As a driver on her road, she was so in her own head that her passengers were invisible to her. She literally didn't notice when people raised their hands while she was speaking. She had no idea when she went off topic. She had no idea when she was flooding them with too much detail. She had no connection with her passengers at all. Sounds sort of like that woman I mentioned, he said. Yes, I agreed. So I believe being clueless like that about your passengers puts a ceiling over your career. It's limiting. You break through that ceiling when you begin to focus on your passengers' needs. You ask yourself, would this be a good time to stop and look at some detail on the side of the road? Would it? Really? Now, I'm not saying don't. I'm saying pay attention. Make a choice. He said, don't default to overtalking is what you're saying, right? Yes. So, look, maybe it's the perfect time to go down a side road. But maybe it's time to do a flyover and just get to the destination. What's going to serve their needs? He said, sounds like you need the Goldilocks touch, not too far down in the weeds, not too high up in the strategy. It has to be just right. And, I said, building on his list, it's not what's right for you as the driver. You don't get to add more stops just because it pops into your head. It's about what's right for your passengers. So you ask yourself, what pavement do I need to lay down to help them get to their destination? Anything that doesn't make the destination easier, leave it out. Drive on by. He put down his pen, saying, the way I hear this is that if I want to stop over talking, I have to be clear about what I'm talking about and focus on my listeners. Would you agree? I did. Michael experimented with the ideas of destinations and passenger connections. He found both mindsets shifted his focus onto the people he was speaking with. He didn't mind admitting how fumbling and awkward he felt, but he stuck with it. And before too long, he began to hear back from people who told him they could see in him the look and sound of leadership. I want to start this part of the show by emphasizing two ideas from my conversation with Michael. First, the tools I talked about are intended for you to use anytime you talk, answering a question in a meeting, answering a question one-on-one, explaining things, asking for things. Do you remember Michael asked a couple different ways, can I do this on the fly? Yes. Yes, you can. Be mindful. Anytime you talk, you become the driver. Drive responsibly. So that's idea number one I want to reemphasize. Here's the second idea. One whole part of my conversation with Michael was about reasons why we overtalk, right? Michael wanted to be thorough. He felt overtalking was helpful. I said that I used to overtalk because I was enthusiastic. Some people overtalk because they don't want to forget something. I wasn't kidding when I said I've coached a lot of people about this behavior of overtalking. They all had some awareness about their habits, and every one of them had a reason why they did it. But here's the point I want to emphasize. It doesn't matter. It does not matter why you overtalk. Overtalking isn't good for you, no matter the reason. It's not good for how you're perceived. It's not helping you look like a dynamic leader. The reason doesn't matter. Get control. Conquer this habit. Okay, so that's two ideas. So now, here we go. In this part of the show, I want to highlight a behavior that I think you can start listening for, and if you can hear it, I think it'll change you and help your overtalking. I want to give you two ways that you might raise your awareness about how you communicate, and I want to end with a story. So let's begin. A behavior you can start listening for. So this behavior came to my attention when I really began listening to how people talk, and what I've come to believe is that we all do it. All of us, myself included. Here's how it sounds. I will explain an idea, and then I will explain it again. The second time through isn't that much different. A little, but not much. Basically, I reiterate what I've already said. I speak in a loop. Have you noticed people doing this? I'm just guessing that you have, because I think we all do. But here's my question. If you've heard someone do it, can you remember what happens to you when they start looping? So I will just speak for myself. When someone starts looping, I notice the loop for sure, and I force myself to stay tuned in because it is so easy to tune out on a loop. So what about you? The premise here is that we all do looping. It's one way we overtalk. Do you know you do it? Could you accept that you most probably do? And could you begin to listen for this in yourself? And of course, you know what's going to happen, right? You're going to start noticing it in other people. If you have the same reaction I had, noticing it in other people is going to make you super self-conscious, and then you will start catching yourself, and then you will stop. So the behavior to listen for is looping. Become aware of it. It'll help you tackle your overtalking. Okay, we're still talking about tackling overtalking. We're talking about two tools to help you build awareness. So imagine a blank map. This is the map of your awareness about your own talking. So the higher your awareness about your own talking, the more details on the map are filled in. At the moment, for the sake of argument, let's imagine that there's lots of space for details to be filled in, lots of room for more awareness. I'm going to give you two different ways that you can fill in your map. The first one, it goes back to a road analogy, but this time, whenever someone speaks, the road and the surrounding landscape turn their color while they are talking. And then when someone else talks, their color starts filling in the road. Looking from above, what you see is a road with different colored bars leading toward the destination. And the amount of road a bar covers, in other words, how big each bar is, represents the length of time a person talked. The longer the talk, the longer the bar. One of the colors on the map is yours. You get to look at your map and ask, does the amount of my color on my map represent me well? Was there enough of my color? Was there too much of my color? And since that's the concern of this episode, overtalking, let's stick with that. One way to help you become more aware of overtalking is by measuring time. Who talked how much? Become aware, track the conversation, and that awareness will help you tackle overtalking. Here's the second way you can fill in your map. So this time, instead of measuring time, right, how much did each person talk, measure what was talked about. So instead of mapping a road, now you're going to map entire countries. Each country that gets mapped represents a stage the communication travels through. It's the metadata of the communication, right? Here's the way to picture it. Imagine printing out the dialogue of a communication like it's a script for actors to read. And now imagine that you're one of the actors, and you're looking at this dialogue, and you're searching for the metadata. You're asking yourself, what are these people actually talking about? What country are we in? And you look at a chunk of the dialogue and you say, oh, look, okay, here's two people who are trading their own stories of the same situation. That's the country you're in right now. You're in the country of trading versions. And then you look and you say, oh, the two of them just joined forces in their dislike for one of the executives. And that's the country you're in now. Joined forces. I call this tracking in real time. What country are we in right now? I know not everyone tracks conversations easily. With certain clients, I turn this into a game. I call the game Slap. I ask them if I can play Slap with them, and here's the rule. If I slap the desk, it's as if I had asked the question, what are we talking about right now? And the goal is for them to answer from the most meta of the metadata. If you want to manage your overtalking, track conversations, imagine countries, listen for the metadata. What is being talked about right now? That awareness will help manage your overtalking. So, two ways to fill in the map of your awareness. Color, as in who talked how much, track the conversation. And countries, as in what is being spoken of at this moment, track the conversation. Okay, I want to close with a story about a time when I changed my mind about overtalking. I will tell it to you right after this month's gratitude. Gratitude to Matt Abrahams. Matt hosts a weekly podcast called Think Fast, Talk Smart. Matt's a lecturer at Stanford and just exudes the look and sound of leadership. He's great to listen to. Gratitude for great content, and gratitude to be able to share it with all of you. Gratitude this month to Erica Malbacher, who left a review on Audible, which, by the way, she said was not an easy feat, but Audible has been uncharted territory for us. So, Erica, thank you for blazing a path there, and thank you for your review. To all of you, wherever you post your reviews, thank you. Your reviews really help keep this show alive. Thank you so much. Okay, so a story. This story happened while I was thinking about doing this episode on overtalking. So I hadn't started writing yet, but I was building a mental file, right? I had all my notes in it, and I was thinking about the idea of overtalking. And one day, I happened to be working with a client of mine named Pooja, and the goal for Pooja's coaching was overtalking. So it's really on my mind. Pooja told me she was getting better at overtalking. And I really hoped that that was true, but I have to be honest, because of my conversations with her, I was not 100% confident that she was actually managing it. So one day she's telling me about a situation at work, and I can see that she's a little agitated about this. She tells me about the four players in the story, none of whom I'd heard of before. There was Hei Ping, who reports to Sindhu, who was a peer with Alexei and his assistant Christy. So she's telling me this story, and I can see she has a lot of feelings about this situation. So she ends her story, and I start to ask her a question, and then I interrupt myself and I say, wait, let me be sure I know who's who. Am I right that Sindhu is the SVP and Hei Ping? And it was as if I had lit a match. Pooja took off and she told me the entire story a second time, which is not what I had asked for. I mean, this woman was looping for sure, and she was getting even more stirred up. And I watched and I thought, well, there's the answer about her overtalking, right? I mean, she has no idea that I was asking a question. She has no idea she's looping. She has certainly a lot of room for growth when it comes to overtalking. And then in like the very next instant, I thought to myself, no, the purpose of this conversation is not for her as the driver to serve her passengers, meaning me. The purpose of this conversation is for her to serve herself. I mean, that's the metadata, right? That's the country we're in. We're in Pooja Talks It Out country. And clearly she's getting a lot of benefit from telling the story a second time. And besides, I'm her coach. I'm there to listen. It couldn't be more perfect. So, yes, even though she was looping, and yes, even though she wasn't connected to me as her listener, I really felt like this really was not overtalking. What also struck me, though, was she was completely without awareness. If you want to tackle overtalking, you have to build your awareness. You have to be able to track the communications you're having. And even when you are having feelings like Pooja, you can still have awareness. The look and sound of leadership rests on the entire concept of self-awareness. If you look in the archives, there's a category devoted to self-management. There's another category devoted to perception, how you perceive yourself. It's all about self-awareness, and that will help you with your overtalking. So will all the resources that we have on communication skills. We have PDFs in the Essential Tools bin. There's an entire category in the archive called communication skills, and there's always more skills in the show notes. So really, all of this is about helping you with your overtalking. Please help yourself to all the tools. 5 specific episodes that you might listen to: Answer What's Asked, Sorting and Labeling. And that's the biggie, right? I mean, this is the granddaddy of all the communication tools. If you can do sorting and labeling, you will not be overtalking, I promise. Staying on track, sounding executive, and sounding well-spoken. Okay, that's it from me. Until next time, I'm Tom Henschel. Thanks so much for listening.